Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome to another installment in the Jomwa Saves series. The series of videos where I show you just how much money you can save by not purchasing a luxury watch today and by considering a lookalike instead. Now usually these are lookalikes of luxury Swiss watches, but today it's the Japanese who get the photocopier treatment from none other than Cronos. Today you can save 13,700 Australian dollars by not buying a Grand Seiko White Birch for 14 grand and by buying a Cronos L6037AM instead for a mere 300 Aussie dollars after vouchers. Now, I should point out that I did not buy this particular L6037AM. It was sent to me by Cronos themselves, hence the pop-up. I will of course therefore leave a link to this watch in their store in the description of the video. Look, if you're time poor, I'll give you the summary of the review now. This is really good. The finishing on this watch is incredible for a sub $200 watch, but I do have one moan, so make sure you stick around to find out what that is. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. Alright then, let's get into it and let's start the video with a confession. I find always a good way to start the video is by confessing something. Despite the fact that I have been making multiple references to the Grand Seiko White Birch, and I showed you the White Birch version of this watch on the thumbnail, I didn't actually get them to send me the White Birch. I asked them for the grey version. I just really like this colour. Nothing wrong with the other one, and everything I say about this watch applies equally to the other colour version. I just thought this one looked super rich, and I don't think I was wrong. What do you get from the package? Well, you get 3 spare links. I'll show you this one on my wrist later on, but that is a good thing. You get a spring bar removal tool, a small screwdriver, very small screws holding this one together, so nice that they supply a screwdriver. We have, not typical for AliExpress watches, a dated warranty card with a stamp on it, and I'm not sure what this is, some kind of firelighter? Yeah, I'm very happy with my choice of this grey version. I think it looks really good. The whole thing, the quality here is fantastic for the money. 5 years ago, this would have blown my tiny mind. I just wasn't used to seeing watches like this for this price. I don't think any of us were. These days, though, I think we're becoming a bit blasé about just how good some of these Chinese manufacturers are. Look at the finish quality on that case. Look at how fine the brushing, the polishing is. It's lovely. We've got a nice vertical brush on that upper bezel surface as well. In fact, let's have a look at the difference in case finish between the Cronos and one of my favourite $200 watches of all time, the Orient Komatsu. Now I know they're very different type of watches and you get the dive bezel and far better water resistance with the Orient, but just look at the difference. They are night and day, the finishes of these. So basic on the Orient, so luxurious looking on the Cronos. And that's before we even start talking about the dial, which is in theory this watch's USP, as it is with the Grand Seiko upon which it is based. Real kind of multiple characters to this one. You look at it flat from top down, it does look a bit flat, and then when you get a bit of light on it, when you view the watch from an angle, as you mostly will if it's on your wrist, it really comes alive. Lots of kind of organic style light and shade patterns on the dial designed to mimic a white birch forest in Japan, or in this case, in China. Alright, I think I made my point already. I think this one both looks and feels a lot more expensive than the price tag, but I do have that one moan for you later on. Before then though, let's do the basics. Let's do dimensions and specifications. This one is 39mm in diameter, bang on 11mm thick, with a 46mm lug tip to lug tip. Now, male end links today, as you can see though, they do curve, but they still protrude. If you have 6-inch wrist, I think you might struggle with this one. More on that later when I have it on my wrist. 20mm between the lugs, there's a taper down to 18, back up to 20.8 at the clasp. As sized for my 7-inch wrist with those 3 links removed, this one weighs in at 142 grams. 100 meters of water resistance screw down crown. That is a piece of boxed flat sapphire crystal, very nice piece of crystal. The movement in the back, Not what you're expecting today, it's a PT5000. Let's hear it for the PT5000. It has been a long time since I saw one of these in the back of a watch. If you are unfamiliar with it, it should probably look familiar though. This is a Chinese-made copy of the ETA 2824. Now, it's not a fake, it's not illegal. The ETA 2824 is well over 25 years old now, so the patent on it has expired. Many companies, including Celita, STP, Soprod, etc., now make their own official versions. This is just another one of those. All clean and tidy, I have to say. It's a good looking, seemingly well manufactured movement, 25 joule, hacking and hand winding, 4 Hz auto. Let's pop this one on the time grapher though. As I said, it has been a while. I'll be interested to see how it gets on. Well, this one is getting on quite alright, thanks very much for asking. Pretty much spot on in terms of accuracy, with 0 beat error and a very healthy amplitude. You only really see the PT5000 in the China Direct stuff. For some reason, it just hasn't caught on with micros. They tend to prefer the Miyota 9000. I think most people tend to prefer the Miyota 9000 because it's a known quantity, but there is nothing wrong with one of these, as those figures will testify. Now, I have already waxed lyrical about the case finish, so we're not going to be here long. Suffice to say, it's just far nicer than it has any right to be given the price tag. There's even a little high polish undercut on the bottom of the case for comfort as well. High polish surround to that sapphire screw-on case back. Now, I always put San Martin on a pedestal for their finishing. I think this is as good as anything I've seen from that brand for $200, and it doesn't have any of the sharp edges that you can find sometimes on San Martins, and that extends to the bracelet and the bracelet clasp as well. Now, in terms of bracelet, now these I believe are only single links, or effectively they're only single links anyway, despite the attempts to make them look like multiple links. Screws hold the whole thing together. One word of warning though, the screws came out very, very easily, so perhaps a little bit of Loctite in there if you are buying one of these and have settled upon a position. And you also get an adjustable clasp for your money as well. Great to see these now filtering through pretty much every micro brand and even into this sub $200 AliExpress stuff as well. Cronos hourglass logo there etched into the clasp. It's not offensive, it's just not amazing, is it? Dial and hands. Now I'm going to mix in a whole bunch of different footage here. I'm going to show you some dynamic shots, some static shots, some macro, some super macro, some indoor and some outdoor, so you get an appreciation of this dial. I think Cronos, the look that they have managed to achieve here is fantastic, given it's still just a molded dial. If you have a look at the Cronos logo and the dial text, the automatic and the depth rating, you can see it's not applied, it's just part of a dial molding. So all those little organic vertical striations, the white birch branches and trunks, if you will, are all just molded in as well. But they've done a really good job, and they've complemented that with some excellent applied indices and one of the best handsets I can remember seeing on a watch at under $200 as well. As discussed, all the indices are applied. There's a much broader one featuring 2 lume strips at the 12 and a little truncated half index at the 3 to make way for a framed date complication. The indices, like the hands, have brushed upper surfaces but high polished bevel edges, again to make the watch look really well finished and to enhance the light play. The hands themselves though are a real standout, very much in the Grand Seiko mold, oddly enough. Not quite as complex as Grand Seiko hands though. Obviously the areas behind the pinion are pretty perfunctory, but everything else looks excellent. One difference between the Cronos and the GS though is the chosen second hand. Cronos has used a red tip to the second hand and a rather prominent lume section towards that red tip. I prefer the original, but this one still looks okay in context. They really used a really nicely colour matched silvery grey chapter ring with minute markers just to bring the whole thing together. 0 points for originality, of course, but I'll give them a 9 out of 10 today for execution. Very good Loom 2 BGW9 according to the listing. Looks good initially. When I turn the speed up, it is still hanging on very well, even towards the end of my test. And that's it on wrist. This 39mm size is pretty much spot on for someone with a 7-inch wrist like myself. 142 grams is on the heavier side, I'll be honest, for a stainless steel Gada style watch of this dimension, but no real complaints there. It just gives the whole watch a feeling of solidity. I think the crystal today adds a few extra grams. It's a really nice, as I said, it's a flat crystal, but it is a kind of box dome crystal as well, which is quite unusual. You either get a piece of cheap flat sapphire or domed sapphire more often than you see this style. The clasp though, yeah, give me 60 seconds and we shall return to the clasp. Overhead legibility is okay on this version. Perhaps the white dial, the kind of original white Birch style version, would give you a slightly better contrast between the handset and the dial itself. Here, it's the loom that is doing the hard yards, to be honest. It's the loom that really differentiates the hands and the indices from the dial itself. But yeah, not too bad, all things considered. All right, moans and niggles. You probably guessed it by now. I'll give you my one major moan with this one, and then I'll give you a caveat as well that is pertinent to this style of one-for-one look-alike, clomage, homage, copycat, whatever you want to call it. All right, the moan. It's the clasp. It's just too bloody big. Perhaps you spotted that earlier on when I talked about the dimensions. 20 down to 18, back up to 20.8. Personally, I never think that you should have a clasp that is wider than the lug width. It just doesn't look right at all. They should have put a smaller clasp on this one. It is quite long, it's just too wide as well. Maybe they should have taken an extra mil off this taper. They should have gone from 20 to 17 and that would have enabled them to put a smaller clasp. Perhaps they might even have been better putting a slightly more conventional clasp on here with micro adjust holes. For $200, the on-the-fly adjustability is a real bonus, but I would have swapped it back. I would have taken that trade and I would have put a smaller clasp on here with a series of traditional micro holes rather than this one. All right then, the caveat, and I do talk about this regularly when I review these lookalikes. At RRP, the Grand Seiko White Birch is 14,000 Australian dollars. The Cronos is 300 Australian dollars, approximately 2% of the price of the original watch. At that ratio, the old save up and buy the real thing argument simply doesn't apply. However, here in Australia, you can pick up a King Seiko 1,500-ish Australian dollars, and I have seen plenty of Grand Seikos over the years featuring the 9F quartz movement for 2,000 Aussie or less. At those prices, the save up and buy the real thing argument does apply, even though it's not quite the same thing, if you see what I mean. However, if you are looking at this watch as perhaps a placeholder until the eventual purchase of a more expensive Grand Seiko, or as a straight affordable alternative to a Grand Seiko, really, not too much to complain about today, providing you've got a big enough wrist to cope with those male end links. One of the best finished watches I've seen at its price, period. So there you have it. If you want the Grand Seiko look but don't have a Grand Seiko budget, then this one should definitely pique your interest. It needs a smaller clasp though, and if you have a smaller wrist, it also needs those female end links. If you're looking for an affordable Gada but don't fancy this one, may I suggest you have a look here or here instead. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you again in the next one.